It was another busy evening at the small, cozy cafe. The smell of fresh coffee and baked pastries filled the air. People laughed, talked, and tapped their fingers to the quiet music playing in the background. Most of them didn't notice the quiet young woman who moved around the cafe like a shadow, cleaning tables, refilling drinks, and making sure everything ran smoothly. She didn't ask for attention, and she didn't get it. To most people, she was just another worker, doing her job without complaint, without anyone really seeing her. She had been working there for years, and over time, she had learned to blend into the background. Customers often came and went without ever learning her name. Sometimes she overheard people whispering about the staff, sometimes laughing, sometimes complaining, but rarely did anyone stop to look at her, to see her as more than someone doing her job. It was easier this way. She liked quiet, liked the small comfort of being unnoticed. Life outside the cafe had been hard and she didn't want to draw attention, but that evening was different. The cafe was crowded, louder than usual, and there was a group of visitors who stood out immediately. They were confident, loud, and full of energy. They laughed in a way that seemed to fill the room and demanded attention without even trying. They noticed the piano sitting quietly in the corner, a beautiful, slightly old piano that no one played much anymore. It had been there for years, just waiting, as if it knew someone special might come along. The group leaned against the piano and joked among themselves. "You ever think this place hides talent?" one of them said, smirking. "Bet these people don't even know how to play." They laughed at their own words, loud enough for the workers nearby to hear. Their eyes landed on the young woman moving between tables. "Hey, you," one of them called, pointing at her. "Can you play?" There was laughter from the group, and she froze for a moment. She had been asked this question before, but never in a way that made her heart race. She looked down, hoping they would lose interest, but they didn't. They moved closer, teasing her, making jokes, clearly expecting her to say no. "Come on, just sit for a second," one said. "Let's see what you've got." She shook her head, trying to ignore them. She wasn't ready, not here, not now. Her hands, which had spent years cleaning and serving, had also once been trained to create music, beautiful, honest music. But she had hidden that part of herself long ago. Life had forced her to grow up fast, to put dreams aside, and to focus on surviving. Music had become a secret she kept in her heart, a memory of better days. Still, the pressure grew. The group's laughter turned into teasing, then into insistence. "Come on, don't be shy," they said. "Just one song. Just for fun." She felt every eye on her now. Customers were starting to notice too, some curious, some amused. She felt her stomach tighten. She wanted to run, to hide, but she couldn't. The piano was right there, waiting. And somehow, in that moment, it seemed like it was calling her name. She had loved the piano once, though only in her mind, imagining it in her small home, dreaming of playing as people listened and smiled. Her hands trembled slightly as she moved toward the piano. Memories flooded back. She remembered sitting at an old, worn piano at home, the keys sticky from years of use, and how the music had flowed from her fingers like a secret river no one else could touch. She remembered long nights practicing, learning songs she loved, feeling her heart pour into every note. Music had been her escape from a world that demanded too much, a world that often ignored her. She remembered the applause of no one, the joy of no audience, yet it had felt enough just to play. Just to feel the music inside her. Now, standing at the piano in the cafe, she felt a strange mix of fear and excitement. She had hidden this part of herself for so long that it felt almost foreign, like meeting an old friend she hadn't seen in years. The group of visitors leaned closer, still laughing, still teasing, expecting nothing. Some customers whispered to each other, curious to see what would happen. The young woman took a deep breath, her hands hovering over the keys. Her fingers remembered the feel of the piano immediately, as if no time had passed at all. She could feel the notes waiting for her, patient, quiet, ready to tell a story she had kept inside for years. She began slowly, almost hesitantly. The first notes were soft, trembling slightly under her fingers. The laughter from the group faded as they realized something unexpected was happening. This was not just a casual performance. This was someone pouring their heart into the music, someone expressing feelings with every note. The customers who had been curious now stopped to listen. The room seemed to hold its breath. Even the busy cafe, full of noise and chatter just moments before, became quiet as the music filled the air. She closed her eyes, letting the memories guide her fingers. Each note brought back a part of herself she had hidden for so long: hope, pain, dreams, and all the times she had felt invisible. The group of visitors who had expected a simple joke now looked shocked. Their teasing faces were replaced with surprise, some even awe. This quiet, unseen woman they had laughed at was capable of something they hadn't imagined. The music told a story no words could convey, a story of struggle, strength, and hidden talent. For the young woman, the world narrowed down to the piano and the music. She forgot the teasing, the pressure, the crowded cafe. She remembered the joy of playing, the freedom of letting her heart speak through her fingers. The notes were not perfect, but they were real, honest, and full of emotion. Each chord was a step toward reclaiming a part of herself she had almost forgotten. And with each passing second she felt stronger, more alive, more seen even if no one had applauded yet. When she finally finished the first piece, the room was silent for a moment. Nobody moved, nobody spoke. Then, slowly, a few customers began to clap. The group of visitors who had forced her to play looked at each other, speechless, unsure how to react. Their laughter had vanished, replaced by respect and surprise. She opened her eyes, a little nervous, but also proud. For the first time in years, she realized that the talent she had hidden so carefully could not be ignored. Even if she wanted it to be. That evening marked a beginning, though she didn't know it yet. The young woman had faced fear, pressure, and doubt, and she had turned it into something beautiful. She had reminded herself of who she really was, and in doing so, she had reminded everyone else too. She was more than just a worker in the cafe. She was a musician, a storyteller, and a person with a voice that could not be silenced. And while the night was far from over, and the reactions of the visitors and customers were still uncertain, she felt something inside her shift. A quiet confidence, a spark of hope, and a deep sense of possibility began to grow. She had been forced into the moment, yes, but what she had done in those few minutes at the piano could never be taken away. The music had spoken, and now the world had to listen. She stepped back from the piano, her hands still tingling from the movement, her heart racing with a mix of fear and excitement. Customers returned to their conversations, some still glancing at her with curiosity, some shaking their heads in disbelief. The visitors who had teased her earlier exchanged quiet words, now quieter, less certain, as if they had underestimated something very real. She returned to her work, carrying a secret smile, a little lighter, a little braver. Something had changed. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing: she would never let that music inside her stay hidden again. After that evening at the cafe, the young woman couldn't stop thinking about what had happened. The memory of the piano, the sound of her own music filling the room, and the stunned looks on the faces of the visitors and customers kept replaying in her mind. It was a strange feeling, half fear, half excitement. She had revealed a part of herself she had carefully hidden for years, and now she didn't know what to do with the feeling that had awakened inside her. At home that night, she sat quietly in her small, dimly lit apartment. The room was simple, just a bed, a small table, and a few boxes of her belongings stacked in the corner. There was no piano here, no music filling the air, just silence. Yet the music she had played at the cafe seemed to linger, as if it had followed her home. She ran her fingers over the edge of the table, imagining the notes, the melodies, the rhythms that had felt so natural just hours before. She closed her eyes and could hear the piano in her mind, each note carrying memories of a time when music had been her life. She remembered her childhood, long before life had become difficult and responsibilities heavy. She had loved music as much as anyone could love something. Hours had passed without her noticing, sitting at the piano in her home, playing pieces she had learned from books, listening to the radio, copying songs she loved. Music had been her escape, her safe place. Whenever the world felt too hard, whenever life pushed her down, she would run to the piano and pour everything into it. Her parents had noticed at first and had encouraged her, telling her she had talent. But life changes quickly, and encouragement doesn't always last. Circumstances forced her to stop. She had to help at home, work odd jobs, and take care of family responsibilities that left little time for her dreams. The piano at home, which had once been the center of her life, gathered dust. The lessons stopped, the music books were shelved, and the dreams of playing in front of people disappeared. Slowly, she learned to live without the piano, to live without that part of herself. And for years she managed. She became quiet, careful, and almost invisible, moving through life without asking for attention or recognition. But now, after that unexpected performance at the cafe, something had stirred inside her. It was a feeling she hadn't had in years, a mix of courage, excitement, and a little fear. She had faced people who expected her to fail, who had pressured her, and she had shown them a piece of her true self. She had shown them what she was capable of. And yet, as she sat in the silence of her apartment, she realized that it wasn't just about impressing them. It was about her, about the part of her that had been waiting patiently, quietly, for a chance to be seen again. She thought about the visitors at the cafe. At first, she had been angry with them, annoyed at their teasing and insistence. But now she felt something different, grateful in a strange way. If it hadn't been for their pressure, she might never have played. She might never have remembered the joy of letting her music speak. She realized that sometimes life pushes people into moments they aren't ready for, and sometimes those moments are exactly what they need. The next day she returned to the cafe. The usual rush of customers and orders filled the air. People moved quickly, some in a hurry, some chatting and laughing. She went about her work as always, quietly and efficiently, keeping an eye on the piano in the corner. It seemed to wait for her as if it had remembered her from the night before. Occasionally, she would glance at it and feel a familiar tug in her heart. The thought of playing again made her nervous. Could she do it without the pressure? Could she find the courage to play for herself and not just for others? Her mind drifted to her past again. She remembered the times when music had been everything, when a simple melody could lift her spirits and make the world feel lighter. She remembered the hours she had spent learning difficult pieces, practicing until her fingers ached, and the quiet pride she felt when she could play a song perfectly. Music had been a part of her identity, something that no one could take away. And yet she had buried it, hidden it, convinced herself it was no longer important. But now she realized that it had never left her. It had always been inside, waiting for the right moment. As the day went on, she continued her work, moving from table to table, cleaning, serving, and helping customers. She could feel the eyes of some of the visitors on her again. A few whispered to each other, clearly curious, while others seemed to be waiting for something to happen. She didn't know if she was ready to play again, but the thought of sitting at the piano and letting her music speak called to her stronger than ever. She felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety building inside her, like a storm ready to break, finally. When the cafe quieted for a moment between rushes, she found herself walking toward the piano. Her heart raced as she took her seat. The keys were familiar under her fingers, each one bringing back a flood of memories. She didn't know what she would play. She didn't have a plan. She only knew that she needed to let the music flow, to feel it again, to remember who she was. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes, and let her fingers move. The first notes were soft, hesitant, like a whisper. But as she continued, the music grew stronger, more confident. Each note carried her memories, her struggles, her hopes, and her dreams. She remembered every late night at home, every moment of doubt, every time she had longed to be heard. The music told a story without words, a story of a life lived quietly, of a talent hidden for years, and of a courage she didn't know she had. Customers and staff stopped to listen. The quiet young woman they had known for years was no longer invisible. She was powerful, alive, and full of emotion. Her music filled the cafe, wrapping around the room like a warm, invisible blanket. Even the group of visitors who had teased her the night before looked stunned. They had expected a small, timid performance, and what they got was something real, something unforgettable. As she played, she felt herself changing. The fear that had gripped her earlier began to fade, replaced by a quiet strength. She was no longer just responding to pressure or expectation. She was playing for herself, letting her music be a voice for all the years she had kept silent. And with every note, she remembered why she had loved music in the first place. It was not about fame or recognition. It was about expression, about feeling, about connecting with something deeper inside. When the piece ended, the cafe remained silent for a moment, as if the world had stopped to catch its breath. Then slowly, people began to clap. The sound was soft at first, then grew louder as more customers joined in. The visitors who had once laughed now looked at her with respect and awe. She smiled quietly, a little embarrassed, a little proud. She had remembered herself, and she had reminded everyone else that talent can be hidden in the most unexpected places. After she stepped away from the piano, she returned to her work, but she felt different. There was a spark inside her that hadn't been there before, a quiet confidence that she carried in every movement. She realized that the music was no longer just a secret she kept in her heart. It was a part of her life again, and she didn't want to hide it anymore. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she knew that the piano, the music, and her own courage would guide her. That day and the memories that followed reminded her that life is full of unexpected moments. Sometimes people are pushed into situations they don't expect. Sometimes those situations reveal a part of themselves that they thought was lost forever. And sometimes, just sometimes, the world notices a talent that has been quietly waiting for a chance to shine. She knew this was only the beginning. The past was behind her, and the music that had once been silent in her life was waking up. She could feel it, growing stronger with each passing day. And she understood something very important. No matter how long a dream has been hidden, no matter how quiet a talent has been, it can never be erased. It only waits for the right moment to return. The next few days at the cafe passed in a blur of work and quiet reflection for the young woman. Customers came and went, coffee was poured, tables were cleaned, and the piano in the corner waited silently for her. Each time she glanced at it, her heart skipped a beat. The memory of her performance and the reaction from the visitors stayed with her like a warm light. It was a strange mixture of pride, nervousness, and anticipation. She had faced the crowd once, but now she wondered if she could do it again. This time without hesitation, without fear, and with the confidence that had begun to grow inside her. That evening, the cafe was quieter than usual. The evening rush had passed, leaving only a few customers scattered across the tables. The dim lights reflected softly on the polished surfaces, and the scent of coffee and pastries lingered in the air. The young woman found herself moving toward the piano almost automatically. It was as if the instrument itself was calling her, reminding her of the music inside her, of the feelings she had kept buried for so long. She paused for a moment, hands hovering above the keys, and took a deep breath. She thought about her journey, the years of practice she had hidden from the world, the sacrifices she had made, and the dreams she had almost forgotten. Each memory strengthened her resolve. She remembered the small, quiet moments at home when she had sat alone at a piano, pouring her heart into melodies no one else would hear. Those nights had shaped her, taught her patience, resilience, and the beauty of self-expression. Music had always been more than notes and chords. It had been her voice, her escape, her companion when the world felt heavy. As she sat down, she could feel her heart pounding in her chest. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling the smooth surface beneath her fingers. The piano was familiar and comforting, yet it also held a sense of challenge. Could she play as she had in her memories? Could she recreate the emotion that had made her performance the night before so special? Her fingers trembled slightly, but she closed her eyes, letting her instincts take over. She had played alone for so long that she knew the music would come if she trusted herself. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, like the gentle whisper of a memory returning. But as she continued, the melody grew stronger, more confident, more alive. Each note carried a piece of her past, the joy of discovery, the frustration of mistakes, the satisfaction of mastery. She let the music flow naturally, allowing her emotions to guide her fingers. The room, though quiet, seemed to listen. Even the few customers who remained stopped their conversations. captivated by the unexpected beauty emerging from the corner of the cafe as she played. She felt herself becoming completely absorbed in the music. The world outside the piano faded away, the tables, the chairs, the lingering smell of coffee, the quiet whispers of the remaining customers, all of it disappeared. In that moment, there was only her, the piano, and the music. Each note was a statement, a message she had kept hidden for years. It was her story, her journey, told without words, yet understood by anyone who would truly listen. The emotions that had built up inside her over the years poured out through her fingers. Joy, sorrow, hope, and longing mixed together in the melodies she created. She remembered her past struggles, the nights she had cried quietly, the moments she had felt invisible and unnoticed. But now, through the piano, she could transform those memories into something beautiful, something powerful. The music became her way of expressing herself, of claiming the part of her life that had been forgotten but never lost. As the performance continued, even the cafe staff who had worked with her for years stopped to listen. They had known her as quiet, polite, and diligent, but they had never realized the depth of talent that lay beneath her calm exterior. Her music was not just skillful, it was heartfelt, alive with emotion, and it carried a story that touched everyone who heard it. Some customers wiped away quiet tears. Others sat in stunned silence, and a few whispered to each other, marveling at how someone so seemingly ordinary could produce something so extraordinary. The group of visitors who had teased her days before now watched in complete awe. They had expected a timid, nervous performance, perhaps even a joke, but what they heard and saw was far beyond their expectations. The young woman, who had once seemed invisible, now commanded the room with her talent. The music spoke louder than any words could, revealing the strength, resilience, and beauty that had always been part of her. The expressions on their faces shifted from surprise to admiration, and finally, to respect. As she continued to play, she felt a growing sense of freedom. The fear that had once gripped her was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence she had never experienced before. She realized that the music was not just for the audience, it was for herself. Every note, every chord, every pause was a reminder that she was capable, that her talent mattered, and that her dreams were not forgotten. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive, connected to her passion and to a world that had often overlooked her. She played for what felt like hours, though in reality it was only a brief moment. Time seemed to stretch and bend around her as she poured her heart into the music. The cafe, the customers, and even the teasing visitors became a distant background, and the piano became an extension of her soul. Each melody was more than just sound. It was a story, a memory, a declaration of who she was and what she had endured. The music resonated deeply, not just in the room, but within her own heart, reminding her of the power of persistence, patience, and belief in oneself. When she finally reached the last note, there was a moment of silence. The cafe, still, seemed to hold its breath, as if the world itself was waiting to acknowledge the beauty it had just witnessed. Then slowly applause began. Soft at first, then louder, growing steadily until the entire room was clapping, cheering, and expressing awe. The young woman opened her eyes and saw the faces around her customers smiling, staff looking amazed, and the group of visitors staring in stunned silence. The sound of their appreciation filled her ears, yet it was not the applause that mattered most. It was the recognition that her music, her talent, and her courage had finally been seen and felt. She stepped back from the piano, hands still tingling from the movement, heart racing with a mixture of exhilaration and relief. She looked around the cafe, seeing people in a new light. Some were inspired, some were emotional, and some were simply amazed at what they had witnessed. She realized that in that moment, she had not just played music, she had shared a piece of herself, a story that could not be silenced or ignored. The quiet young woman who had once gone unnoticed had become a force of beauty and emotion. All through the power of her talent. As she returned to her duties, she felt different, stronger, more confident, and more connected to her own life. The piano remained in the corner, waiting patiently, but she knew it would always be a part of her. a reminder of the night she had rediscovered herself. She had faced fear, pressure, and doubt, and had transformed them into something extraordinary. Her talent, once hidden and forgotten, had found its voice again, and there was no turning back. In the days that followed, the memory of that performance stayed with everyone who had witnessed it. Customers returned, some specifically asking to hear her play again, some bringing friends and family to see the young woman who had transformed a quiet cafe into a stage of emotion and beauty. Even the staff spoke about her in hushed tones, amazed at the depth of her talent and the courage it took to reveal it. She became a quiet inspiration, a reminder that sometimes the most remarkable gifts are hidden in the most unexpected places. For the young woman, the experience changed something deep inside. She realized that her music was more than a hobby, more than a secret she kept. It was a part of her identity, a voice that could not be silenced. She felt a new sense of purpose, a desire to explore her talent further, and a belief that her dreams, long postponed, could still become reality. The piano was no longer just an object in the corner of the cafe. It was a symbol of possibility, of courage, and of the power of being true to oneself. That night, as she walked home, she felt a lightness she hadn't known in years. The city around her seemed brighter, more alive, and she felt connected to something larger than herself. She knew the journey ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, doubts, and moments of fear. But she also knew that she had discovered something inside herself that could never be taken away: her music, her talent, and her courage. The world might have forced her to hide it once, but now it was awake, alive, and unstoppable. The young woman returned to the cafe the following week with a quiet excitement bubbling inside her. Since that first evening when she had been pushed to play, things had started to change. Customers who had witnessed her performance whispered about her talent, some returning just to hear her play again. Even the staff treated her differently, looking at her with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. The piano, once a silent object in the corner, had become a symbol of her strength, a reminder that something long hidden could rise to the surface when the right moment arrived. That evening, the cafe was busier than usual. The chatter of customers filled the air, clinking cups and the hum of conversations creating a warm, lively atmosphere. Yet, in the midst of the noise, the young woman felt a familiar pull toward the piano. It was as if the instrument itself was calling her name, inviting her to sit, to play, to share what she had kept inside for so long. Her hands tingled with anticipation and her heart raced. She knew that once she began, there would be no turning back. This time she would play not because someone demanded it, but because she wanted to, because it was a part of her life that refused to be ignored. As she approached the piano, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. Memories of her childhood and past struggles returned vividly: long hours spent practicing, moments of doubt and frustration, nights of quiet triumph when a piece finally came together. Music had always been her sanctuary, a place where she could express herself freely without fear of judgment. Those memories fueled her courage, reminding her of the joy she had once felt and the dreams she had postponed. She took a deep breath, placed her hands on the keys, and closed her eyes, letting the music guide her. The first notes were gentle, almost like a whisper, soft and tentative. But as her fingers moved across the keys, the melody grew stronger, more confident, more alive. Each note carried her emotions: years of longing, hidden talent, hope, and resilience. She let the music flow naturally, allowing her feelings to shape the rhythm and intensity. The cafe, full of customers and noise, seemed to fall silent, as if the world itself was holding its breath to listen. Every sound, every note, became a bridge between her heart and the people around her. She remembered the nights she had played alone, the moments of self-doubt, and the times when she had wondered if anyone would ever hear her music. Now, in this small cafe, she realized that she could share a part of herself that had been hidden for years. Each chord, each melody, was a story, a message, a piece of her soul reaching out to the world. The customers, some who had been skeptical, some who had never noticed her before, stopped their conversations and turned their attention to the piano. Even the group of visitors who had teased her days earlier now watched with amazement. Their expressions a mix of surprise and admiration. As she continued to play, her confidence grew. The fear that had once gripped her melted away, replaced by a quiet strength. She no longer felt pressure from others. She felt the freedom of expressing herself, of letting her music speak for her. Each note carried emotion, each pause allowed the story to breathe. She realized that the music was not just for the audience, it was for her. It was a declaration that she had survived, that she had talent, that she had a voice that deserved to be heard. The atmosphere in the cafe began to shift. What had once been casual chatter and background noise transformed into attentive silence. Customers leaned forward, captivated by the depth and beauty of her performance. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them, feeling emotions they hadn't expected. A few discreetly wiped away tears, moved by the honesty and intensity of her playing. Even the staff, who had known her for years as a quiet, diligent worker, now saw her in a new light. She was not just part of the cafe. She was its soul, its heartbeat, its unexpected source of beauty. The group of visitors, who had initially forced her to play for amusement, now felt humbled. They had laughed, expecting a timid performance, perhaps even a joke, and instead witnessed something extraordinary. Her playing was not just skillful, it was full of life, emotion, and authenticity. They had underestimated her, and now they realized that talent often hides in places where it is least expected. Their teasing smiles had vanished, replaced by respect and quiet awe. The young woman, once unseen, had transformed the room, and in doing so, she transformed herself. She played longer than she had intended, letting the music guide her without thinking about time. Each note was intentional yet effortless, as if her fingers knew exactly what to do. She felt a connection not only to the piano but to everyone listening, even those who were hesitant to show their emotions. The music became a shared experience, a moment of connection between her and the world around her. She realized that despite the years of hiding, the fear, and the doubt, this was exactly where she was meant to be. As the final notes lingered in the air, there was a pause, a collective breath held in awe of what had just happened. The cafe remained still for a moment, the silence almost sacred. Then, slowly, applause began to rise, gentle at first, then louder, stronger, until the entire room was clapping and cheering. The young woman opened her eyes, her hands resting lightly on the keys, heart racing. She looked at the faces around her, customers smiling with wonder, staff amazed, and the once teasing visitors now speechless. The sound of their admiration filled the room. Yet what mattered most to her was not the applause itself, but the acknowledgement of her courage and talent. Tears of relief and joy welled in her eyes, as she realized the depth of what had just occurred. She had shared her heart, her story, and her hidden talent with the world, and it had been received with love and respect. In that moment, she felt seen in a way she had never been before. Her music had become a voice, a bridge between her inner world and the lives of those around her. For the first time in years, she felt completely whole, understood, and alive. The applause gradually faded, leaving a quiet, warm atmosphere in the cafe. She stepped back from the piano, hands still tingling from the emotion and movement, and returned to her duties. Yet everything felt different. The routine tasks she had performed countless times before now carried a new meaning. Each cup of coffee poured, each table cleaned. Each interaction with a customer was colored by the confidence and pride she had discovered through her music. She was no longer invisible, and she no longer needed to be. In the days that followed, word of her talent spread quietly. People who had been in the cafe that evening spoke about her music to friends and family. New customers arrived, curious to witness the young woman who had transformed a simple cafe into a place of beauty and emotion. Even those who had doubted her or dismissed her talent began to see her differently. She had not only shared her music, she had inspired those around her to recognize that everyone has hidden potential, waiting for the right moment to shine. For the young woman, the experience was transformative. She realized that the music she had once buried was an essential part of who she was. It was a reminder of her resilience, her courage, and her ability to face fear and emerge stronger. She began to practice more intentionally, not just for the cafe, but for herself. for the love of music and the joy it brought. Each practice session was a journey of rediscovery, a reconnection with the dreams and passions she had once set aside. She also noticed changes in herself beyond music. She walked taller, smiled more, and spoke with greater confidence. The fear of being invisible began to fade, replaced by a quiet assurance that her talents and passions mattered. She no longer hesitated to embrace opportunities that came her way, even small ones. Each interaction, each moment, was colored by the knowledge that she had reclaimed a part of herself that had long been dormant. One evening, as she walked home after another day at the cafe, she thought about how far she had come. The young woman who had once hidden in the background, fearful and uncertain, had transformed into someone who could face an audience, share her heart, and leave a lasting impact. She realized that her journey was not over, that there were more challenges and opportunities ahead. But she also knew that she had discovered something that could never be taken away: her courage, her talent, and her voice. That night, she dreamed of future possibilities, performances, sharing her music with larger audiences, perhaps even teaching and inspiring others. She saw herself as a part of a bigger world, one where her hidden talent was not just recognized but celebrated. And while she knew that life would continue to have obstacles, she felt ready to face them with the strength she had found through her music. The piano, once a silent companion in the corner of a cafe, had become a symbol of her transformation. It reminded her that talent, courage, and persistence can awaken at any moment, even in the most unexpected places. And she understood that her journey was not just about music, it was about self-discovery, resilience, and the power of revealing one's true self to the world. After her unforgettable performances at the cafe, life began to change in ways the young woman had never imagined. People who had once ignored her now looked at her with admiration, curiosity, and respect. Customers returned to the cafe, some asking to hear her play again, some bringing friends just to witness the music that had captivated everyone. Even regular visitors who had come before and overlooked her began to notice her quiet presence, realizing there was more to her than they had ever expected. It was a strange, wonderful feeling, being seen after so many years of feeling invisible. The young woman found herself walking through the cafe differently now. She moved with a quiet confidence, aware of her growing reputation but determined not to let it change who she was. She remained humble, still focused on her work, but there was a spark in her eyes that hadn't been there before, a spark of hope, courage, and recognition of her own worth. The piano in the corner became her friend, a trusted companion that reminded her of the journey she had taken and the talent she had reclaimed. Every time she sat at it, she felt alive, connected, and whole. One afternoon, a visitor approached her while she was arranging cups behind the counter. He introduced himself as a local music teacher who had heard about her performance through friends. He explained that he was impressed by what he had heard and wondered if she had ever considered playing more seriously, perhaps performing at local events or even teaching others who wanted to learn. She was taken aback, unsure how to respond. She had never thought of her talent as something that could reach beyond the cafe, something that could inspire or impact others. Yet there was a flicker of curiosity and excitement in her chest. She hesitated, her mind racing with doubt and possibility. Could she really take this step? Was she ready to share her music with more people, to let herself be truly seen? Memories of her childhood dreams and long-hidden ambitions rose to the surface, reminding her that she had once wanted this not for fame, but for the love of music and the joy it brought. The thought of letting her music touch even more hearts filled her with both nervousness and anticipation. After a long pause, she nodded slowly, agreeing to consider the opportunity. Over the next few weeks, small changes began to take shape. She continued her work at the cafe, but she also began to practice more intentionally, experimenting with new pieces and refining her skills. The piano, once an instrument of secret practice, became her stage, her outlet, and her connection to the world. Customers often stopped to watch, captivated by the emotion and honesty in her playing. Her confidence grew, and with it, a sense of purpose she had not felt in years. Every note she played was a step toward reclaiming her dreams and embracing the person she had always been. One evening, After the cafe had quieted down, she was approached by another visitor, someone who had been observing her for several performances. This person suggested she participate in a local music showcase, a small event where musicians from the area could perform in front of an audience. At first, the idea terrified her. The thought of a larger crowd, unfamiliar faces, and the possibility of failure made her heart race. But then she remembered the courage she had found at the cafe, the way she had transformed fear into music, and the joy she had felt when she allowed herself to be seen. Slowly, she began to consider the possibility. Preparation for the showcase became her new focus. She spent hours practicing each day, learning new pieces and perfecting old favorites. Her connection to the piano deepened, each note infused with emotion, memory, and intention. She thought about the people she wanted to reach through her music, the ones who might feel invisible, unrecognized, or uncertain about their own talents. She wanted them to know that even hidden gifts could rise, even quiet voices could be heard. Her determination grew with each passing day, fueled by the support of the cafe staff, regular customers, and the quiet encouragement of friends she had begun to make. The night of the showcase arrived, and she felt a mix of excitement and fear. The room was filled with people she did not know, all gathered to celebrate music and talent. She sat backstage, waiting for her turn, hands trembling slightly, heart pounding. Memories of her past performances at the cafe resurfaced, both comforting and intimidating. She thought of the first time she had played for an audience, the nervousness she had felt, and the overwhelming sense of connection when the music flowed. Now, she had the chance to share her talent with an even larger audience, and she knew she could do it. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage, feeling the eyes of the audience on her. The lights were bright, the room filled with murmurs and anticipation. For a moment, she felt the familiar grip of fear, but she took a deep breath and remembered the courage she had discovered at the cafe. She approached the piano, fingers brushing the keys, feeling the familiar smoothness beneath her hands. The first note sounded soft and tentative, and then she let the music take over. As she played, the audience fell silent, captivated by the emotion, honesty, and skill in her performance. Each piece told a story, each note carried a part of her journey, the years of hiding, the struggles she had faced, the dreams she had almost forgotten, and the courage she had found within herself. She felt completely immersed in the music, her body and mind connected to every sound she created. The audience responded not with polite applause, but with deep, heartfelt attention, leaning in as if to listen to her soul through the piano. Her confidence grew with every note. She remembered the quiet days at the cafe, the surprise and admiration of the customers, the first recognition of her talent, and the moments when she had realized that music could express everything words could not. Now, on this larger stage, she felt the full weight of her journey. The fear melted away, replaced by a quiet strength and clarity. She was no longer hiding. She was no longer uncertain. She was herself, fully, completely, and unapologetically. When the last note faded into the air, there was a moment of stillness. Then the room erupted into applause. People stood, clapped, and cheered, some with tears in their eyes, some smiling broadly, and some simply in awe of what they had witnessed. The young woman sat for a moment, heart racing, hands still hovering above the keys, absorbing the overwhelming reaction. It was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Her music, once hidden in silence, had touched the hearts of strangers, reminding her that talent, courage, and honesty could create a connection that transcended words. After the showcase, people approached her to congratulate her, to thank her for sharing her music, and to ask how they could hear more. She smiled, a quiet, humble smile, realizing that her life had changed in ways she had never imagined. The piano, her music, and her courage had opened doors she had never thought possible. Opportunities for performances, collaborations, and teaching began to appear, each one a chance to share her gift and inspire others. But beyond the opportunities, she felt a deeper sense of fulfillment, the knowledge that she had reclaimed a part of herself that had been hidden for too long. Back at the cafe, life continued, but everything felt different. Customers and staff treated her with respect, admiration, and a quiet reverence for her talent. She still worked her shifts, still cleaned tables and served drinks, but she did so with a new sense of purpose. The piano remained in the corner, always ready for her. Always a reminder of the journey she had taken and the courage she had discovered. She played often, not for recognition, but for the love of music and the joy it brought to herself and others. Through this journey, she realized something essential: talent and dreams do not disappear, even when life forces them into the background. Courage, determination, and a willingness to embrace opportunity can awaken them again, allowing a hidden gift to shine. She understood that life is full of unexpected moments, moments that may seem intimidating or overwhelming, but can transform a person if they have the courage to embrace them. Her music had become not just an expression of herself, but a symbol of hope, resilience, and the power of being true to one's passions. In the months that followed, she continued to grow as a musician and as a person. She taught music to children who had dreams but lacked confidence, inspiring them with her story and her talent. She performed at local events, small concerts, and gatherings, each performance reinforcing her belief in herself and the value of her gift. Yet, she never forgot the quiet beginnings, the first hesitant notes at the cafe, the fear and the courage that had propelled her forward. She remained grounded, humble, and connected to the life that had shaped her. Always remembering where she had started and how far she had come, one evening, as she sat at the piano in the quiet cafe after closing hours, she looked around at the familiar space and smiled. The journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every moment. She had been forced into performing, pushed into a situation that seemed uncomfortable, yet that very moment had unlocked a hidden part of herself. What had started as fear had transformed into confidence, joy, and opportunity. She understood now that life's challenges often lead to the greatest discoveries, and that hidden talents can emerge when least expected. Her story became an inspiration to others, a reminder that courage, perseverance, and honesty with oneself can lead to unexpected and wonderful transformations.